And this is a Fox News alert, a surprise. In the Scott Peterson double murder trial today, his defense has rested early. There will be 8 rebuttal witnesses. That starts tomorrow. Closing arguments we now are hearing are scheduled for Monday. Joining us now with more on the short case from Mark Garagos and the defense team, Fox News legal analyst Lee Sweal from Redwood City, along with criminal defense attorney Ginny Walia and former prosecutor Wendy Murphy in Boston. Let's start with you, Lee. Take us back to the beginning. Or Ginny, let's start with you in terms of your response to this fairly quick case here by Mark Garagos.
Well, Mark Garagos, it was a surprise. There's no question about it that he overpromised and underdelivered. The problem here is that it's one of the fatal mistakes that you can make, to overpromise in your opening argument and then end it that quickly. I don't think his defense was very helpful. He would have been better off just resting at the end of the prosecution case and delivering a very strong closing. He can still do that. However, I don't think that the defense was very useful.
Interesting. Wendy Murphy, former prosecutor, joining us from Boston. Do you agree? Do you think he would have been better off to just rest after the prosecution case and then just wrap it all up in a big closing argument?
Oh, absolutely. You know, he did make too much of a promise. Remember, he all but said, I'm going to prove to you who the real killer is, and I'm going to prove that this baby was born after Lacey went missing, which, if he could have proved that, would have been incredibly important in the case and may have led to an acquittal. Because he didn't do that, I think the jury's going to go into the deliberation room thinking that Mark Garagos is a showman and that his client must be guilty because he was trying to do all these dog and pony show tricks and grandiose promises. And that actually can be a thumb on the scale against the defense, whereas if he'd rested right after the prosecution's case ended, they would have gone in there remembering all those really good points Mark Garagos made when cross-examining the state's witnesses. They're not going to remember those things at this point.
Lisa, we're all sort of talking right now as if this case is over, but of course those jurors are going to go into that room, and they have been sitting there for 5 months listening to both sides of this argument. You know, when they go in there and they look at Mark Garagos' argument, do you think that there is a chance that they may say, he has not proven, the prosecution has not proven to me beyond a reasonable doubt that Scott Peterson was not involved in this? There's no blood evidence, and I know the list of things that we've been hearing.
Right, right. And Martha, I think, you know, we're kind of second-guessing everyone here. I think there's a lot of blame to go around on both sides. Now, I've been in and out of that courtroom for weeks and weeks now, and I've seen great lawyering, and I've seen mistakes in lawyering, and I've seen questionable judgment in lawyering. So I don't think, you know, heaping it on Mark Garagos is entirely appropriate. I've said from the beginning, I thought the prosecution failed to tell a story. They failed to tell a compelling story. They picked up a lot of steam towards the end. And in cross-examining some of Mark Garagos' witnesses, they picked up even more steam. I'm sure that's not exactly what he had intended. But the bottom line, Martha, you're right. When the jurors go in that room, none of us are going to be there. There are no cameras in that deliberation room, and they are going to sort through all of this. And at the end of the day, the prosecution does bear the burden of beyond a reasonable doubt. If they believe in Mark Garagos' witnesses, i.e. Scott's mother and father, for example, then they may not convict. But there's a lot of really, really good circumstantial evidence that would lead them to beyond that reasonable doubt bar, Martha.
Ginny Walia, you know, I've sat on a couple of juries, and I know that one of the most significant things that the jurors take into that room with them are the directions of the judge. What kind of things do you expect this judge to lay out for these jurors before they head into that room?
Well, the jury instructions there are some general jury instructions that are given in all criminal cases, and there are specifics. The judge will instruct them to not hinge their decision-making on opening statements or closing arguments. They must look at the evidence. They must look at the testimony of the witnesses. They must look at physical evidence, and the judge will instruct them that opening statements and closing arguments are not evidence.
Yeah, Martha, the judge will definitely instruct them on that, absolutely. But I'm sorry, jurors, you know, we're all people. We are going to listen to the opening for our directions, for our roadmap as to where the trial is going, and we're going to listen to the closing as to what each side has said, purported to have done. And, of course, they're not supposed to take that in as quote-unquote evidence, but they'll also be told not to suspend their common sense when deciding and deliberating, and they'll take that into consideration, Martha.
All right. Ginny Walia, Lee Sweal, and Wendy Murphy, thank you very much, all of you, for being with us.